elevator pitch for our movie, which we haven't yet titled. The narrative for it is, well, first it's a psychological thriller mostly. There's a massive enigma throughout the whole of the opening sequence. It makes the audience want to obviously watch the rest of it to see what's actually going on. Our main girl is supposedly the antagonist, is like your first impression, where throughout the movie you actually begin to realise she's the protagonist. But for this part of the opening sequence, she's the antagonist. There are 4 other characters. We follow their normal journeys, as well as the main girl's normal journeys of waking up in the morning, walking down the street, doing various things of like their everyday lives. They all make the same journey to the same lift, which for the audience they would think it was just coincidence that they'd all be getting in the same lift, but actually the antagonist is kind of like a sidekick, and she knew that they were all going to get in the same lift, so she kind of, you see her rushing to get to the lift with them for specific reasons again, which will be revealed later on in the movie. So the antagonist enters the lift as the doors shut, with everyone in there. And then the news footage begins, overriding all of the editing, and everything becomes really amplified, it becomes really fast-paced. And then, yeah, you see editing of backstories of the other characters in the lift, and we realise why they're in the lift, or what led them to get there, or what they were doing on the way there. And then, as the music and news reading stop, the end of the opening sequence reveals the antagonist stood essentially in the lift as the doors open, with the bodies of the other characters surrounding her on the floor. And that's why. Why did that happen? So, yeah. Oh, and what happens next? This is basically what would happen if we were to carry on this movie, what would happen. The antagonist is followed throughout the film to reveal that she is actually the protagonist. She's eliminating all of the bad people in the world, and we realise by following the 4 other characters that were in the lift that they're not actually good people, and they died for a purpose because they weren't good people.
Okay, so in terms of characters, you'd have the female who's the antagonist, and she'd appear to be quite normal, you know, you wouldn't expect anything bad out of her. And then the news readings begin to appear, and then you kind of start to get confused as to what she's up to. And the audience doesn't really understand why she's done what she's done, but that's revealed later. And then she would be like the enigma. And then the second character would be a man. He could be a businessman, probably dressed in a suit maybe. And he bumps into somebody on the way and doesn't apologise. And each of the characters, like the main 4 characters, have, like, they've done, as you see at the beginning, they've done something, it's really, really small, but they've done something bad. So, and he bumps into somebody and doesn't apologise for it. And then the third character is another man who is, I guess, a lowlife, and he's seen objectifying a woman. And then the 4th character is a cyberbullying teenager, so control online. And then the 5th character is also a woman, and she feels she's kind of quite superior, very arrogant, and she's seen throwing chewing gum on the floor.
For the mise en scène, the locations are meant to seem normal. So we've got the lift, obviously, where they'll all be trapped at the end. But the places where we meet the characters initially, they'll just be busy streets, just to show they're having everyday lives. So you don't actually think that they're bad, and that's why the main woman is seen as an antagonist. And then we'll hopefully get some news footage off YouTube of the bad events. The costumes will also add to this. For example, the businessman will be in a suit, perhaps an unbuttoned shirt to show he's stressed or things like that, and the girl might have a slightly shorter skirt and things like that, just to show their characters without using dialogue. The lighting's also going to be ordinary. We don't want the audience to presume that the characters have dark pasts until later in the storyline. And the sound also helps with this. The tension grows throughout as when we add in the news footage and things like that. And then it finally builds up, and then it's going to stop when you can use the diegetic sound of a lift when it goes ding, just to add impact at the end. But we don't really want to use much speech because we want the audience to sort of presume instead of actually giving them hard facts.
Our audience is going to be predominantly people who like psychological thrillers, are interested in them, and it's going to be 15 certificate due to growing threat. and violence. And our influences are the film Devil, because we like the use of a lift to create tension and fear, and Fatal Attraction and Gothica, psychological thrillers with female antagonist protagonists, just goes against stereotypes in psychological thrillers. And our cultural influences are the Greek tragedy of the woman predicts the invasion of Troy but nobody believes her.
These are our roles. So I'll be doing editing after the filming. Lucy's going to be doing camera work and be the director. Kira's going to do sound editing and lighting. And Connie's going to do the mise-en-scene and costumes. But we're all going to contribute. But those are our main roles.
We're going to help each other out if we have any other ideas about what someone else could do with their role.
Any
Thanks,
questions?
Questions, anybody?
How are you going to do the lift scenes? Are you going to actually use a real lift and then just...
Yeah, we have a real lift at the girls' school. We have 2 there, so we're going to see which one looks the best for our production and hopefully use one of those.
Because there's not actually much footage within the lift, so the actual size of the lift won't be much of an issue. Just take shots looking into it.
Also, were you going to make your own news footage, or were you just going to use like old ones and out of context?
We're going to use old ones, but what we're going to do is we're going to try and find, because we're going to get shots, but the dialogue that goes with that might not necessarily be for that footage. So it's just going to create all this and build up the tension, and so in the end it's all just a loud noise of news sounding.
The news footage is mostly to kind of express to the audience how there are really bad things going on in the world and not really much peace going on, which kind of is like an underlying thing throughout our story.
Any other questions? Question from me. I'm concerned that you are turning this character into a protagonist who seems to be having questionable morals in terms of who she's judging to be a bad person based on someone who's just bumping into another person or just spitting chewing gum on the floor. So it could be a case that rather than she's the protagonist, she is actually an antagonist who is unstable, unhinged to some extent, or the bad things that the other characters do are a bit more severe. So I think that would be something to tweak and look into slightly with your storyline. It also reminds me slightly of the film Seven, where you have a psychopathic character who takes his sort of personal retribution against who he perceives as being sinners in the world. So that could be a film that you might look into to get extra ideas and how that theme has been used cinematically as well. I wasn't completely sure how you were working in your influence with the Greek tragedy. It didn't seem to I couldn't seem to see a connection with the Greek tragedy and the story that you presented. Could you clarify that?
We thought about the idea that in the Greek tragedy, the woman, she kind of, no one believes her about what she's trying to say to other people about people being invaded, and she doesn't, people don't believe what she's trying to say. And if we were to carry on our storyline, that would be quite a main plot, is that no one understands why she's doing what she's doing, and she's getting in trouble for doing it.
Okay.
She has a reason to be doing it.
So is it a case that this character has previously tried to raise attention to the evils in the world and everyone has denounced her?
Yeah, and so now that she's going on to actually do bigger actions, which will get her into trouble.
Okay.
For killing people.
Because what we forgot to mention earlier was the fact that in the opening sequence, the actions that the people do are small, but these are actually representative of their bigger actions you discover later in the production. For example, the man who bumps into someone who doesn't apologise, that's significant. He actually hits his children at home and things like that. So initially the audience feels that this antagonist is overreacting because of small actions. But later in the film we then discover that these people have darker pasts.
Okay.
And she's actually, although she's not doing it in a morally justifiable way, she is trying to remove these bad people.
Okay, that works a bit more in terms of why the reasoning behind it. Any other questions from the floor? Thank you very much.